what I'm saying, Mike Raglan. Are you shorting it up, Raz? Maybe because you dress, you know what I'm saying, you dress cool or whatever. They be like, hell no. There's always 1,000 Michaels everywhere, so just to always be able to go Mike Rags, you know, it just stuck. That's how I came up with the Rags. A lot of people that I know, especially being from the South, being from the Bible Belt, we have this this standard of what a person who says they believe what they should look like, how they should talk, how they should move, how they should dress, who they should be around, you know, what should they be involved in. And I think that just like with the Constitution, anything that was written thousands or hundreds of years ago, it's hard for anything that old to still be relevant in the times or in a world that time is always changing. You know, like we just said, everything has to be able to adapt. So what would that look like, or in your opinion, just your perspective? These are just our opinions. We don't know what's really going on, but what would that look like? You know what I'm saying? What would Jesus look like in 2020?
It really starts with how you fundamentally see Jesus, point blank period. And everybody sees Jesus differently.
No,
everybody.
For sure.
So, are we talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking
about me
from the great Mike.
We talking about me?
Yeah.
So here we go.
Mike.
So for one, truth be told, Jesus don't really care about none of y'all riches and all that stuff. He wasn't really. If anything, it's making sure that everybody has what they need to be able to have what they need to be able to thrive in this world. To be able to, I see Jesus, the way I see Jesus in the text is one that tries to remove whatever barriers are preventing people from being able to live a full life. And in living a full life, it's not the idea of like, living a full life is the opportunity to be able to live and thrive without impediment.
Okay.
Or I like how I've been watching Lovecraft Country. This is not an ad. Lovecraft Country on HBO. On HBO.
I watch it.
In one of the episodes, I think it's episode 5, I want to say. Ruby, she talks about how she always feel like she's interrupted. So how she's like trying to get this job at the store, but racism is interrupting that. She's qualified to be able for the position, but this barrier, this impediment is stopping her from being able to achieve this goal. Okay. And so kind of using that example, it's like I saw the way I see Jesus moving in the biblical text is like, what are these impediments that are stopping people from being able to live their lives? What are some things that might be personal impediments? What are some other things that may be systematic impediments? So like when we talk about like Jesus turning over tables in the temple, there were these systematic impediments that was preventing poor people from being able to like they're pretty much charging poor people to be able for them to like present a sacrifice in the temple, to where it's like people like you shouldn't be hustling God's people. Like they shouldn't even, first off, this is
I'm gonna talk about
no, because I'm trying, because this other thing too, because I think with the training, I'm trying to make sure I'm still being theologically sound too. Okay. So so that's why I want to be measured in the things I say, because there's a responsibility, because sure, I paid some good loans for this. And I ain't finna be messing folks stuff up. But the thing about, but just to go back to the idea, like there shouldn't be these impediments from people to be able to live a full life.
Right. Okay. So what does a full life look like, and is there a way? Okay.
So here we go. So what it look like in 2020? So I would see Jesus in the street with Black Lives Matter, because they're out in the streets. We're out in the streets fighting against these impediments. When we talk about police brutality, when you're talking about police violence, when you're talking about the criminal justice system or the criminal legal system, depending on who you're talking to, or criminal injustice system, whoever frames it, you have these systems that have been impediments to people being able to thrive.
Okay.
You know, when you have bills and laws that are in place that are disproportionately affect Black and brown people more so than other people, you know, on one hand, yeah. So you have these impediments. You have these impediments that are blocking people from being able to live full lives. And I can see Jesus being in the streets, fighting for people, fighting against these impediments that are blocking people from having full lives. So that's where it's one of those things that this real active Jesus who's not a person who's so spiritual that they're not going to engage into real life, that they're not going to engage in real life issues that are impacting people in a real way. Like some stuff you're not going to pray racism away. Racism is lockstep with a lot of the racist policies that have been around for hundreds of years.
Right.
You have to vote people out. You have to constantly stay on your elected officials about these things. People have to write legislation, have to write laws that are not racist.
Sometimes you gotta flip tables, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you
gotta flip tables, and flipping tables looks a lot. It looks a lot of different ways. Sometimes you might have to kick some stuff open. Other times you might have to go to a voting booth. Other times you have to go to your city council meeting and rip one of your city council officials. You might have to tell one to your mayor and to your governor. And to anybody who are creating the impediments, who are creating the barriers that are preventing people to live a full life.
Now, because what some would tell you what it could be the argument with that is, but what if you trying to live your full life trespasses on me trying to live my full life? Like, what if, and this is not necessarily how I feel.
Give me an example.
Okay, so like, for example, with people talking about, we were just having this discussion the other day about them forcing homosexuality on people in shows and stuff now.
Ain't nobody forcing nothing on nobody.
But you have people who say, I can't even enjoy my show now because they are doing too much. And so you know what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
So with that thinking, then it becomes, well, it's not just them doing what they want to do and making themselves happy. Now it's like they're trying to engage me and tell me that this is what I have to accept, or this is what I have to believe, or like, you know, it's like, okay, it's like, oh, not only is it them wanting to do their own thing by themselves, now it's like you're forcing me to be a part of it too.
And so my response to that be, just ask yourself, why does that bother you? Because you can look back into when black people start showing up on TV. Why they forcing these black families on me? Why that's the thing about it. When like we have to be careful not to, like, on one hand, play the oppression Olympics. Like it's a large amount of groups who are oppressed, who are fighting for representation, and everybody deserves to have representation. Point blank, period.
Right.
Then also to the idea that nobody's forcing any ideas on people. Like, it's just a question about, hey, these are real things. These are real life, like real life situations.
It's a reflection of real life.
Yeah, like there are gay people in the world.
Right.
There are gay people who work at places, who have jobs, who have families. That's a real thing. There are black people who have families. Let's show that. There are black people who are drug dealers. Let's show that. There are black people who live in 2-parent households. Let's show that. There are black people who live in single-parent homes. Let's show that. There are gay black people. There are gay black people. There are gay white people. You have lesbian couples. You have homosexual couples. I love the show Pose. Pose got mad trans people on there. I'm learning a lot about the trans community and the history behind that, in that community, for watching that show. And it's a damn good show, too. You know, and it's like, the thing is, and it's not forcing anything. If anything, if you're open to it, you begin to want to understand more about other communities. This is about understanding. Like, it's funny, like, a lot of times when we talk about, like, dealing with racism and dealing with sexism, all these things, it's about, well, they just need to understand us. They need to take the time to listen to us. But then we don't want to listen to other people. We don't want to see their experiences. We don't want to try to understand their experience, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Then ask the question, well, why am I uncomfortable? So it's less about the other person than maybe asking yourself questions as to why I may feel this way. Why am I so against this? Why do I really what fears do I have? Do I fear if I have a kid that my son or daughter is going to be gay?
Right.
And then it's my fault that they're gay? When they ain't got nothing to do with you.
Right.
Gay people that came from 2-parent households, single-parent households, straight households for ages.
For sure.
That don't mean that the parents did any less. They didn't do their job. No, people like who they like. Some people experiment. Some people say, hey, okay, I like guys. Okay, I want to try girls. I like girls. I want to try. It's life. It's life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I just feel like too though, if you don't agree with it, then I just feel like shit, just don't watch it, don't rock with it. It's not like it's something that they are like saying that it's only one channel on TV and this is all we have to watch. Like there's so many things that you can go out here and watch. If you ain't rocking with it, just don't rock with it. It's some show like P Valley. I'm not gonna lie.
I love P Valley.
I haven't seen the episode of P Valley because I heard about that one scene and I don't want to see that. I just don't want to see it. I don't think that does anything for me. You know what I'm saying?
P Valley was a good show.
I understand. And it's, being from Memphis, my folks even know what the original P Valley was. You know what I'm saying? What Pussy Valley really was in Memphis. So it's just like I get the history of it and I understand, but it doesn't do it for me. But I don't have a problem with people who I don't tell people they shouldn't go watch P Valley or they should take it. I was like, shit, it just don't do nothing for me. Like
that's fair enough.
And I feel like I should be okay to say that without it seeming as if I'm condemning those who do, because y'all know I have people who are very close to me that are in that community.
Absolutely.
I love them dearly. And at first it hurt me that they didn't want to tell me because they felt how outspoken I used to be, especially on topics like this, that I would condemn them or that I would judge them. And so that's why I just want to get people to get out of because you can't stop yourself from having people around you who you love from being and doing what they want to do. You need to be able to express how you feel about it without it seeming as if you are telling them this is wrong. You know what I'm saying?
But especially if it ain't hurting nobody.
Right. That's
like it's one thing if your family members addicted to some drugs. All right, we got to figure something out because we don't want that, because we know that can cause some damage in a lot of different ways to that person, just from physically, emotionally, psychologically. But when you talk about just like personal preferences and things like that, like all right, it ain't hurting me.
Right,
It's not nothing destroyed. And I think that's why I think asking ourselves questions as to why does this bother me so. I think those, and again, you don't have to watch the show, but it doesn't negate asking the question, well, why don't I want to watch it?
Yeah.
Why would that scene bother me?
It just
and again, it's worth it.
I think it's just, and
you ain't got to answer it here.
Oh well, nah, but I will. So I remember I was watching the Dave Chappelle special, and he said it, and it was like kind of jokingly, but it really made me realize, because it was after I watched it a few times. I was like, damn, that's a good point. He was like, one day I had the luxury to do something a lot of black men don't get to do, and that's really just sit and reflect. Think about, you know what I'm saying? Really take time to reflect and think about it. Because as a black man, you really don't have the time to worry about things that aren't affecting you as if like on just a day to day, like bills, finances, relationships. Like these other things take precedence over everything else that we could just kind of theoretically sit and think about. Mm-hmm. But when you do get into a place where you can take some time and just really like dive into yourself and just figure out, like you were saying earlier, you want to just sit down and write down some of the things that you feel like you could do better in being in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, and just really sit and just ponder that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's
like you gotta know,
a luxury to be able to do that.
But you gotta move that from being a luxury to making it a priority. Like we need time to reflect, because we keep going and going and going, we gonna miss stuff.
For sure.
And we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the people that we love to just take time, and whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to just sit back and think about, okay, where can I improve? Sometimes it's good just take that time and just not even have an agenda with it. Just take time to just sit there and not do nothing.
See, I can't ever do that though.
Try it.
I'm about to say I might need to try
it.
I remember you always used to say, get in your garden. You know what I'm saying? That was one of your famous, well, I ain't gonna say famous, but that was one of the sermons that I heard that really gripped me. And we were talking about how everybody has to eat. Even Jesus, before he took on the task of being the sacrifice, said, you know what? Let me get some time alone, away from my homies, away from the 12, away from the 4 that came close. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to be away to really just be with myself, my thoughts. And
it's important, man.
It definitely is.
Because we got to get out. Because again, to your point, the world is always throwing something at us. It's always rushing. It's rushing with something new. Sometimes it's rushing with some of the same stuff. It's rushing with new stuff. And we need And we need time to just be able to process stuff, to process our thoughts, to process our feelings, to process where we currently are in the world. And a lot of times in those opportunities to process, it is that opportunity to breathe. It's like we always running and we don't have opportunity to catch you don't have the opportunity to catch your breath. And you need that because then you run out of steam. You become overwhelmed. You burn out. And then at that point, you're no good for yourself. You're no good to the work that you want to do. You're no good, like you're done. And then from there, you can almost slip into the spot the way you just don't want to do anything now because you're tired.
Right.
And so a lot of it too is about taking those moments so you could pace yourself, so you could recalibrate, so you could get your energy back. Sometimes even take a step back and make sure that you on the path that you intended to be on.
Yeah, sure.
You know, sometimes we get so in the habit of always feeling like we got to do something. And then if we're not doing nothing, we feel like we wasting time. It's like, no, sometimes reflecting and chilling is doing something. It's taking care of yourself. It's self-care. True. Self-care is important.
If you don't properly take care of yourself, then you can never be the best boss, best boyfriend, girlfriend, best husband, wife, father, son. You can never really be the best at any of those things if you really don't take the time to be the best you first.
Absolutely.
Now let's we gonna bump all around the Black State of the Union. We gonna go to politics. How you feel about Trump getting COVID? Do you first off, do you believe that he really has the coronavirus?
I can't even say yes or no. I don't know.
I don't think he got it. I think for real, cause bro is such a shrewd marketing genius, bro. As far this man was telling us he was a billionaire before he ever got his first billion, and I had publications saying he's billionaire Donald Trump when really he was just worth a few $100 million.
That doesn't sound like he lying to me.
No, but what it did though was create in the mind of everybody else that this man it's almost like Ali. I mean, in a different way. But when Ali said, "I said I was the greatest before y'all," I said I was the greatest before y'all knew I was. Or something. It was something to that effect. Like he was going to say he was the greatest before you even knew he was the greatest because he had that confidence. But it's in a different. It's kind of like a different twist. But I think bro just know how to play the game right. You know what I'm saying? And I don't like it, but
I ain't gonna even give him that much credit. I ain't gonna give him that much credit. Nah, I'm not. Like for one he started out with an advantage, and sometimes you can't help out where you start. Like
Sure.
When you got parents who got money, when your daddy could cut you a check and say go out here and be great. All right, everybody daddy can't just cut them a check out here with 9 figures on it and just say go be great.
Right, for sure. Okay.
Well, 8 figures. So how we put like more figures than I got.
Right.
That's one. And then I think you go back to this conversation about character. Like, the man's a habitual liar. He's a racist. He's proven himself to be such. And so when you have those things as a narcissist, like the list goes on. I mean, even the way like when you talk about working the system, like the idea like he has no ethics. He has his business sense is not grounded in any kind of moral ethic, and I think, and that's something to even be like, that's something we got to take in consideration because you see how that's translated over into the politics.
Right.
He does not have any moral, ethical, any grounding in that. So lying to him is second nature. That's how come he can lie. He can change the story. It can twist it. And the funny thing is, it can be labeled as marketing. No, he's just lying. and the thing is, and I think this is the thing with Westfeld does in his politics with him. Like nobody calls it as it is. None of these reporters call it what it is. Like none of the media call it. He's a liar. And so when you have a liar now come out here, who funny thing in March calling this thing a hoax, to now all of a sudden a month before the election you want to tell me you got it. Of course, I'm not mad at anybody who thinks that he's lying because he done lied about everything else. Why wouldn't he lie about this?
But doesn't Trump seem like so American? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but bruh seem like when you talk about lying and marketing, it's really the same thing or propaganda. It's pretty much the same thing. It's always about being able to omit as much of the truth as you can with it still being somewhat plausible. It doesn't even have to be factual. It just has to be Like, oh, we can think that this is really fat free. Anytime you see a lot of stuff that say fat free on like foods and stuff, and it's been FDA a lot of times it still contains a lot of fat in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it says it's fat free to make you think, oh, it's free of fat. When in fact it's just below a certain level to where they can then deem it fat free. Like but it's always a game. Like everything is always, to me, about America been about making ourselves seem to be something that, or to be greater than we really are. And
Absolutely.
I think that's even when it comes to like the global market and how we present ourselves out here. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of freedoms and things, and that I do appreciate about being here. But it's just like, when it comes to other countries in the world, once you go and see those other countries, you kind of come back and be like, oh, America real ghetto.
Nah, this the fun thing about America. America on one hand will say we the leader of the free world, but then we'll go destabilize other countries who were democracies, and then put in a dictator.
Right.
Like we did. Like we'll destabilize democracies. Like I was just listening to this podcast, Throughline. It's an NPR podcast, and so like the first episode was about in Iran in 1953, how the CIA helped destabilize how it helped destabilize Iran, and it was a democracy at the time, and because of oil.
Right.
And so they came in there, staged the coup. It failed the first time, but they eventually did what they needed to do to make sure the coup went through. And from there, after that coup, they had a dictatorship that ran for like some 20 some odd years after that. Then the whole other Iranian revolution happened in 79. But it's like the idea that this democracy can go and destabilize other places in order to make sure they put governments that's going to benefit American interests. And so it's like that irony. On one hand, like I said, we the leader of the free world, but then at the same time, we'll go destroy other free worlds.
Right.
And I think that's like the double-sided nature of America in a lot of respects. On paper, it can say one thing, but then how it manifests in real life, not only for many of its citizens within the country, but for a lot of people abroad, like it's a different story. And so like when we swing it back around to Trump, like I said, like in the idea that like, yeah, he's definitely a quintessential American in a lot of respects.
Sure, for real.
Like, I mean, you just see.
Before this, I think that like Trump was literally like what a lot of white America, like racist white America, original thinking white Americans, you know. So I think he really was like their golden boy. Like, this is what we want to. We want to be able to say whatever the fuck we want to say without having to worry about any repercussions because of our privileges being, you know what I'm saying, white men with money in America.
Man,
it's crazy. That's what they want.
The foundation of America was for landowning white men. Mm-hmm. Like, it was the idea if you were a landowning white man, if you were a wealthy white person, like those are the people who were in power, who still in a lot of respects remain in power. Especially when you talk about all the money that's in politics right now. Like, a lot of these politicians in bed with corporations because they the ones that cut the checks. They cut the big checks. Mm-hmm. And so you always going to answer to whoever cut your check, from the local level to from local government all the way through the federal government. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about this guy and this virus and whether he got it or not, at this point, it's almost a moot point to try to figure out if he actually has it or not. It's really about the spin that's gonna happen on after 14 days. The spin is already, like, the spin job is in full effect. So however, and it's desperation too. It's desperation. Because again, you got somebody who's already articulated how they may not be willing to concede power. In the event that he didn't win, he lose the election.
Sure.
You're finding ways to undermine our electoral system. You know, by way of saying like, hey, this method is not reliable, but that's a method that you use. When you're saying mail-in ballots, and like folks been mailing in ballots for I don't know how long, and then the numbers show that the percentages of it, even that kind of fraud even happening, is pretty much next to none. And so it's like you see this desperation. And again, and the funny thing is Trump is like a scapegoat in all of this too. It's almost like he's just the face. It's them other the Mitch McConnells of the world, those other senators who, and the other enablers. Because in a lot of respects, the enablers, there's some power that they have that they don't want to lose. That they're connected to with him. Like they want to push this, they want to push this judge through.
Right.
You know, that's a whole nother situation right there. Like, just it's the situation with the Affordable Care Act and how they want to get some stuff overturned with that. So it's a lot of different moves at play. And a lot of times too, he's like, it's funny, Trump on one hand could be the red herring to where like he's the distraction while we got these other things moving. Mm-hmm. And so this is the part where as citizens of this country, it's our job to be vigilant no matter who's in office. So whether it's Trump, whether it's Biden, I don't care who it is, we all have a responsibility to push this country in a direction back to the original, back to what we talked at the beginning, to where we remove as many impediments as possible that's preventing people to be able to live fully uninterrupted lives. Because with the way this thing is set up now, this wealth gap is getting huge between the haves and the have-nots. Sure. Truth be told, a bunch of us, we one check away from figuring out what we gonna do. It's not too many of us that the path to wealth is difficult. It ain't easy. And a lot of us are starting, we ain't on the field. We ain't even in the game. Nowhere near the stadium. Right. Ain't on nobody's team. And so it's like we trying to find ways to close that gap. Trying to find ways. Like the fact that like, I know how much I get taxed every check. And you mean to tell me he only dropping $750? And look, and that was a year he decided to pay something. I was about to say, yeah, in 2 years. And again, and funny thing is, it ain't just Trump. It's them other large corporations who get away with not paying taxes. But guess what, though? You know why? It's because you got legislators who write the laws for them to be able to find ways that they don't have to pay the taxes. So I always come back to the lawmakers. That's who we got to look at.
And then those are the people, when it comes to elections, that they don't have any kind of, well, other than judges, but they're appointed. But they don't have any kind of restriction on how long they can be there. So they can serve 20, 30. Well, how long Shelby been in there?
Richard Shelby?
Yeah.
How long has Richard Shelby been? Look.
Before I was born, I think. And I'm almost 30.
But I think this is the part too where a lot of us, we young. And it's interesting because on one hand, I know for me, I'm definitely not the biggest fan of politics. Like I would not, I would never see myself running for office. But I also should say too, it take people like us to say, okay, we want to run and see something. They're like, actually, I was watching not too long ago, watched a documentary. It was about AOC and a few other women who were running for different congressional seats. And like, again, they were like, I think she might have been the only one to win because a lot of them were like going up against people who had been in their seats for years. Yeah. And she knocked off somebody who like was a Democratic stalwart. Like he been there for a while, but she got on that ground and worked. And again, she working in a restaurant while she was doing all this. You know, like there's somebody, she probably made your margarita and then was out here in your neighborhood handing out flyers. There's another woman in Missouri, and I think she actually won this time, but she was going up against a guy who had been in office forever. And she ended up being him. And so it's like we're in a time period now where there is this energy that people are looking for new faces and fresh faces who really do who fight on behalf of just common working everyday people, because that's what you mostly got in America. Like everybody out here trying to do the best they can to take care of their families, put a little sum away, save for their kids to go to college, save to have a nice retirement, not trying to do too much. But you got other folks who just take advantage of that system. In the meantime, we become casualties of that. And so, but it takes people getting into these senator seats, into these congressional seats on the national level and on state level.
That's probably more
it take people reshuffling city council positions and things like that. New faces in mayoral positions and different. Like there needs to be this new energy, because I mean, even when we look at this presidential election, we got a guy that's 77 that's running for president and a guy that's 74 who is president. Now, I don't want to be ageist, because that would be wrong. But I'm going to be honest. I'm about to sound very ageist right now. I own that. I don't think I want... My parents are 71. Love my parents. Feel like they're two of the smartest people I know in the world. However, I don't think I want them to be the president of the United States right now. You know why? Because they're 71. When you're 71 and in your 70s, I'm not going to say that there is any room for new ideas, but you've been around long enough and you probably feel how you feel about a lot of things.
Right.
There's probably the freshness in the ideas may not be there as much. I mean, I look at my parents. My mom loves being a grandma. That's what probably be grandparents. Enjoy that life. You work 40-some odd years already. I'm good. Been there, done that. It's time for I think that's why we need young freshes, new ideas, in hopes of carrying our country, especially when we talk about this climate change stuff. We need people who think differently now. Because we gotta let them thoughts of the 60s and 70s and 80s go.
Just move us away from thinking that's been running this country for the last 300-400 years, right? The same mindset, the same. Like
Nancy Pelosi, 80. She 80. She look good, but she 80. Yeah. I know. And look, John Lewis, God rest. I love John Lewis. John Lewis, my guy. John Lewis was in his 80s. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's 87.
Yeah.
Sharp as a whistle. Don't get me wrong. But we gotta reconsider the world that we living in. If we really was we was praying for her to hang on.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be praying for an 87-year-old to be hanging on. She should be able to, if she ready to go, she should be able to ride out.
Live her life.
She fought a good fight. It's our turn to fight. That's what I think. That's the thing about it too. Between fresh ideas, us stepping up and doing more. I don't need my 87-year-old great grandma out here trying to hold it down when we could be holding it down for her. She should be chilling.
But I think it's just the fact that we so detached from politics. I know a lot of people that I talk to. Just why even? I know niggas my age who still ain't voted. Who can vote? It's not that they have anything keeping them from voting. They just don't vote. And I'm like, not even on a local level. And I'm like, bro.
They wildin'.
Yeah, I'm like, bro, you gotta be. Even though, because I'm one of those people, I just don't believe voting is the all in all. I know there's voting
It's a tool.
It's
a tool in the kit.
These things, it's a lot of things that need to happen, but that's one of the things. It's pretty much the easiest thing you could do for most of us. Unless, like I said, you have
voting is the least taxing thing that you could do to
try to make change,
to raise your voice in your political process. Now, this is the interesting thing, though, too. I could understand why people say they don't care for politics, but we can't afford to not care for about politics, because it affects our lives every single day. The laws that they write, your friends will be impacted by it whether they want to be or not. They can have a hand on making sure they got the right people in there writing laws if they decide to, one, vote. Then, two, stay on them people's head. But they got to be engaged with the process. They got it. I think it's so funny now, because I get why my parents in their 30s was watching CNN and stuff all the time and listening to NPR. Like I said, Brian and Carl, my mom, I'm like, why are we listening to NPR? I get it now. That's what I'm saying. I don't even listen to that much music anymore. I'm like watching CNN. Like it's
old.
So look, listen. Let me see. Like I'm listening to podcasts to like catch up on news, learning about different histories about things, so you can start putting the pieces together. Watching Fox News, watch all of them. I need to hear what everybody talking about, so you can have like a full scope of ideas, what people are saying. Listen to what's happening on what BBC talking about, what they talking about around the globe and everything, because it's important. And like, because all these things affect us. Like, we just don't operate in silos. Like, it's so many laws being written right now that the homies don't know it's gonna affect them till it affect them. And then it's like, boom, you locked up. Or boom, you gotta pay this amount on a ticket. Boom, they just redlined the mess out your neighborhood. You ain't forget nothing for your house now. Boom, they just rewrote. Matter of fact, at least tell them to fill out the census. Cause they don't fill out the census, then they redraw the districts, and then boom, you can lose seats, you can gain seats. Like it's like you can't.
Now in Birmingham with this surge of others coming back into the city, yeah, moving back downtown to Birmingham and stuff like that. It's definitely, I can see in the next 16 to 20 years being a white man in Birmingham again. I can definitely see it. Somebody was telling me Randall, and this is, obviously people who don't know Randall, but somebody was telling me Randall was like the first ploy to like get it to where like white people start like being more involved in what's happening in the city. Yeah, somebody was telling me like Randall is, like I said, it's obvious somebody who doesn't know him. We know him, but that's what people feel like, and I think it has more to do with, like you said, black people just not being aware, like, okay, this census thing is a real thing as far as because right now Birmingham is majority black. Been that way for a few years since the Great White Flight. once Richard Arrington got in office. So it's been black for so long. I think we take advantage that it's gonna always be a majority black city. Well, not if you don't let them know in the census that you live here. You know what I'm saying? Because then they're gonna look at all these folks is moving in these lofts and these new little things they building in downtown. There's not a lot of us. So that's who. The demographic has changed now. It's really more like 50-50 white and black now. It's more like 55-45 white to black. Instead of
school gonna start looking different. Everything gonna start looking different.
Yep.
And I think. And another thing that could help with our engagement with the political process, it's an education thing too, in terms of how we talk about politics and government within our schools. I know I'm currently teaching government and economics right now. Like, I'm going back through reading the Constitution again, because I thought to myself, like, I really hadn't really just sat through and read the Constitution for real, and like understand like how the people who frame the government, like, just why they frame it this way, like we in class was talking about the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, and the Federalists, they wanted it like this loose interpretation of the Constitution because they looked at it as a living document, so that we, as the country changed, we can adapt it. Right. You had Anti-Federalists like, no, you read this word for word, you follow it word to word. Now the funny thing is, you wouldn't have had a Bill of Rights without the Anti-Federalists. It was like, yo, we need guaranteed rights, right? Because we know. Because for them, the Federalists were like the rich people who were writing it, essentially. The ones who were big on manufacturing, the ones who was big on industry. And then Anti-Federalists, a lot of ones who wanted an agrarian society, but they also, a lot of them probably connected to with agrarian society. Of course, that kind of links back to slavery and everything too. And so, like, just even those conversations about like the foundation and the forming of the nation, why our Constitution is the way it is, looking at how amendments were added over time. And from there, you looking at your state government, how your state government got their own situation going on. You go look into your city government. And it's so in teaching our kids what all of that means. Not just waiting till their senior year. Because a lot of times that's where you're going to get like a deep dive on government. You're going to get a deep dive on economics. Right. But you're not really getting that from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. Like, I remember like on the business side, they did like junior achievement, maybe like I was like in 5th grade or something like that. But a lot of those are like kind of supplementary things versus like this It's like, and not only just recover, but like a good deep dive in it. Like, because you'll learn about Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. You learn about the Constitutional Congress real quick, but it's like real quick. There's no real pulling back the layers. And the sooner our kids learn about pulling back the layers, and the sooner they get involved in the political process. Because this other thing too, a lot of times we invite them they get invited to the political process traditionally when they turn 18 and they're said you can vote.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is they should be involved in the political process like within their elementary school years, because when you talk about education and how laws and things will be written that impacts them directly when they're in schools, and they should be a part of those conversations.
Right.
And just different. So when you have that type of engagement with politics at a young age, I can see like when they become adults, like when you're able, you got to be 25 to be able to run for. That's when you're eligible to run for a seat in the House, or the seat in the House of Representatives. You got to be 30 to run for a Senate seat. And so when they get to those ages, there's already this engagement with it. So now it's like they kind of come in like, okay, like I want to say this excitement about it, but like there's this knowledge that they can pull from about the political process.
True understanding, yeah.
Versus like your first kind of introduction to it is like, hey, 18, go register to vote. And it's like, what is that? Like, what does the weight of my vote carry? And even in this conversation around voting right now, like what I don't like what's happening right now is people getting shamed about whether they choose not to vote. Like, that's your right. You could choose to use it or choose not to use it. And then people are hitting with the way, your ancestors died for that. I mean, my ancestors died for a lot of stuff. They died for a whole lot of stuff. Voting wasn't the only thing. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, because I know for myself, I don't think I've missed an election since 2004. And for a lot of it is because one, it's like I know that is a way for my vote. That is a way for me to have a hand in my political process.
Right.
But I also understand too that I can't just stop it at that.
Right.
It's not limited just to my vote. But I also have to understand too that because I have a vote, we should leverage that. We have to learn how to leverage that better. Like, it's not something as simple as people just showing up every election cycle begging. Like, there has to be this thing about, hey, this is what we expect out of you. We vote you in. We got a checklist, and if you ain't hit our check marks,
agenda, yeah, like a unified agenda of what we want to see as a community.
Now that's a whole nother conversation because like that sounds good,
but it'll be hard.
It sounds nice. It sounds real. Like, I love the Black Agenda conversation. I'm like, yo, that sounds real nice. All right, so what does that really mean? Because it's hard for people to really tell me what that really means.
I mean, just you want to make sure it's something specific. Like, you want to hear people spell out what they're going to. Like, even Obama, he never really said what he would do just for Black people, or it was always minority. It was always like we have yet to see a president, governor, mayor that I can remember in recent years that has said, you know what, Black people. I will make sure that this is done for Black people. These things are done for. And if by way of me doing this for Black people, it helps out some lower income others, that's cool.
I mean, that's typically how it goes.
But we need to focus on getting Black people something. You know what I'm saying?
So,
I feel like
I think I get that, and I'm with it. Like, I know there have been some organizations who've laid out demands. I want to say like the Movement for Black Lives. I want to say that they've laid out some things before, or have laid out some things. And I think, but to that point, it's like there has to be. It's almost like, on one hand, like, I don't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump to tell me what I need.
No. It would be something that we would have to.
So that's my point.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part where like you present. So the question becomes, who's presenting it? Because there's a bunch of Black people in America. Yep. It's a bunch of different types of Black people in America. Yeah. Ronnie's Bahamian. My girlfriend's Guyanese. We Alabamian. Cause like you got people who are African,
right?
Like, you have like different pockets black people from the South versus black people from the West versus black people from the North. You know what I'm saying? Black people in the Midwest. You know, affluent black people, poor black people, middle class black people. You have such a diverse group of black, and that's like the spectrum of black people is very huge. Mm-hmm. So when we talk agenda, it becomes like what black people are in the room to create the agenda. Who's in the room? Because ideally, from an aspirational point of view, it's like, I get it. We need a black agenda. All right. How does that break down? Sure. On so many, like, so now we talk about when you start assessing like who in our communities need the most help. That's probably a question that needs to be asked. What laws are already on the books that are detrimental to the advancement of black people in America? Because that may be something to raise the man to, like, okay, we need sentencing for certain non-violent offenses to be reduced. Right. Something to that effect. Who within our black community suffers the most economically, and what on that agenda would address that? When we talk about providing more job opportunities, more whatever. And I think those are other questions and conversations, especially that thing about who's in the room, because that's important too. And again, it could be more than one room. I'm not saying like there's this one room that's going to address everything for black people, because that's not realistic either. And I think that's the part where we move from like this big aspirational idea of a black agenda to on a concrete level, from a national to a local, because everybody local politics can look different too. Something as simple as Birmingham look different than Fairfield. Yeah. Birmingham is gonna look different for the black people that live in Hoover. It's gonna look different for the black people that live in Huntsville, probably. So that black people in Birmingham versus black people in Atlanta.
All right, but what we do know is that no matter what type of black you are, at the end of the day, you are still put into a box of blackness in America, right? So let's just start with the black agenda being something that addresses that box that we are all put in. Let that be the first thing on to understand that all black people aren't this. That is that within the black community, we are just as diverse as America. We are just as much of a melting pot, just being black, as America says they are within, with all these different races.
Absolutely.
So maybe the first thing in the agenda would be to
don't even number it. Just say something that could be in the agenda.
I'm not necessarily numbering, but I'm just saying like, well, a thing that could be done. It could be just making sure that they are aware that, or there's a certain awareness that black people, like, there are different, like, just put the whole spectrum, how you just broke it down, how like there are so many different black people in America. Just let's break that down and then look at each one of their struggles. Like, it's gonna take real effort, research.
And I think, but you hit on something too though, because what we can say from a national level, because when like certain laws are put in, like when certain legislation is passed, it's legislation for all of America. But some of that legislation hits us more than it hits others.
Oh, that's right.
And so that could be questions around, let me see. What's one that comes up in my head immediately?
I mean, it's not just drugs, just or weed in general. Mm-hmm. Because when in the 70s and 80s, when crack was a thing, it was, all right, boom, these people are criminals. Mm-hmm. Let's go and let's go detain. Let's go do whatever we have to do. Now that it's an opioid epidemic and a lot of white kids using pills and stuff, and now it's they're sick. Mm-hmm. Let's help them. And it's like, wait, what's the difference between that pandemic
And so now it came to my head. So when we talk about like comprehensive prison reform, like what? So when we talk about people, yeah, that's it. So comprehensive prison reform, where you know the majority, like 13% of the population, but we make up over half of the prison population. I want to say,
yeah.
and so and then we break those numbers down. Most of the nonviolent offenders,
Right, yeah.
So what? So then, what is that transition like? What does that look like from next? Like, well, because what Trump passed that first step thing or whatever, but I think that might have some holes in it. But for finding ways to flow that people can come back into society, but then come back into society without their past hanging over them. Because a lot of times, like I was talking to a former classmate recently, and he was just his story. He was just discussing how, because he has a disability, it's difficult. It's funny. He has a disability, but he's not able to get disability. Right. And then, but then because of his disability, he can't get a job. So he's caught in the middle. And it's like, I'm not trying to go back to my former life, because my former life, I don't win with my former life. But now I'm trying to move forward, but I'm handcuffed moving forward. So what are ways that when people come back into our society, I don't even like saying that. It sounds kind of weird saying that. But when people leave prison, I'm just saying it like that. When people come out of prison, that's a better way of saying it. When people come out of prison and they're looking and they're searching for employment, like in some states now, they banned the box where you don't have to check that you had a prior conviction. Because again, another way to discriminate against people. Because some people would tell people you serve your time, but then they serve their quote unquote debt to society, and they try to come back and work. Then in your mind, because they did something, now they still this. Like that's another thing too. We don't really believe in redemption in this society. That's a whole nother conversation. But so yeah, I think that's the part where I know was reading Ibram Kendi's book, two of his books, How to Be Anti-Racist and Stand from the Beginning. And one of the big things he talks about is like just racist policies and how racist policies, those like it's almost like in a lot of respect, that's like the heart of like racist ideas and racist attitudes, because they're embedded in the policy. In a lot of respects, you change the policy. The hope is that in time it begins to change the attitudes. But the policies are what impact us the most. Like it's one thing for somebody to say like to act racist, but
right,
like
it's another thing
when the laws are racist.
Yeah,
like
sure.
that was the thing about King. King was like, I'll try to change your mind later. I need to change these laws first. Right. Like, you know, your hearts. All right, we like because you can have the best heart in the world, but if a racist policy is still on the book, because about interest.
Right.
A lot of politics at the end of the day is about interest. These people could sit on different sides of the aisles and yell at each other all day, but if they can find common ground or find a common interest, they'll be on the same team. And so it's like, as the people, we gotta find ways to create laws that are in our best interest as the people. And a lot of times, the only way to get those laws made, one, we either fill the seats, or two, we have enough people power to where we have enough people power that the people who hold the seats, they pretty much afraid to go against the people because they know they vote. They know that seat is on the line, because at the end of the day, people do whatever they got to do for votes.
Right, for sure.
That's one thing.
That's one thing that kind of killed me about the debate was just like, and I think I was watching The Brilliant Idiots and they touched on it, but for this election in particular, we have such a polarizing, like it's like the competition is so polarized. You have a far left and then you have really like a far right trying to both, what I would think, try to get us in the middle who kind of, consider ourselves neither far left or far right, just people who just want change and progression. Not really doing anything to say anything that will sway us one way or another. To me, both of them really was still feeding into their regular, the far left. Trump was still speaking over there to those white racists, supremacists, and then and Biden was still speaking to conservative, but liberals. Well, I say like conservative liberals. You know,
Yeah.
the old. So I feel like no one really took the time to really say, you know what? Let me make sure I grab some of these black people and just say that. That's what kind of bad for Charlemagne and Andrew Schultz too. They were like, they didn't even just say something to just make it seem like they wanted our vote. Like it's like they know they don't care.
This the funny thing. Biden got black people vote. That's so
Off the rip.
That's sold up. I'm gonna tell you. So remember, notice. OG said this the other day. Older black people are going to vote. You ain't got to beg them. You ain't got to say much. They already know what time it is. They done been there and done that. What was it? Super Tuesday in South Carolina when Joe Biden crushed Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. He crushed him because my boy was Clyburn from South Carolina, the congressman down there. That coupled with the fact that it's like, yo, like you said, we know Joe and we old black folk. We gonna vote. We gonna vote for Joe. Point blank period. Y'all cool? Hear what y'all saying? We vote for this guy right here.
It was already made up.
It's already sold up. And then the Democratic. So with that too, Joe was probably out of the major candidates in the Democratic Party. Joe's definitely still moderate. He gonna talk. No, he gonna if he gets in office, the farther left wing of the party is probably gonna have a little more influence on him then. But right now, Joe trying to get those middle of the road people to get them to come vote for him. He ain't worried about black people vote for him. Black people ain't finna vote for Trump.
Hey, that's bro. I see some folks that be saying some suspect stuff.
I'm gonna tell you now. One black women, he probably gonna get at least 96% of that vote. That's already done.
Right.
Of the black women that will vote, he's getting 96% of that. Of the black men who vote, he's probably gonna get at least 90%. They ain't worried about black folk. Latinos, yes. Asian Americans, probably yeah. Middle of the road white people, yes. They ain't worried. Trust me, he ain't got to talk about no black agenda right now. He good.
Yeah, that's why I know, and that's what bothers me though, because we had a candidate yet again. This is twice we burn for who we thought would be the better political candidate, and it bit us in the ass the first time. We knew it wasn't going. We just knew we were finna get a woman in office. First woman. Oh yeah, boom, 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 and here comes Trump. And I think the same thing is gonna happen. I swear, I think the same. I think as much as we feel like black people are going to pull up and vote for Trump, I feel like with us choosing Biden, it's gonna make a lot of black folks say, you know what, I'm just gonna sit my ass at home, and that's gonna be the problem.
But the election's not gonna swing because of black people. It's gonna be because of white women.
White women.
That's why I swung the last time.
But I think, look who we had running last time. A white woman.
53% of white women voted for Trump.
That's what I'm saying. And he grabbing them by the pussy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? No offense, but that's what he doing.
So truth be told, with Joe might get it with the white women.
He might, and I think that's why I think we were trying to get some of those conservatives. I don't think it was ever about trying to get the black people. I think it was about trying to get these conservative people who voted for Trump last time to say, you know what?
That's what it is.
Let's get him to come over here with Joe Biden.
You look at the numbers. They showed this the other day on MSNBC, I want to say. And they were showing the numbers of the states that Hillary lost by a large margin. Matter of fact, they showed it for like Obama, from Obama's two elections and from 2008, 2012, and 2016. So they showed that Obama won Wisconsin and Michigan by a good amount in 2008. 2012, the numbers dipped, but he still won. 2016, Trump ends up taking both Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, this year, the number, I think, actually Biden has a lead in Michigan right now, and the numbers are lower in Wisconsin right now, but closer to where it was when Obama won in 2012. Okay. So the numbers are shifting. So the thing is, if there's that's true. I think that's the demographic right there, white women. Like black people have always traditionally. Let me rephrase it.
For the
At
most
least
part,
since probably FDR, black people have voted Democrat for the most part. Yeah, since FDR for the most part. Hadn't never really had to worry about it. They do enough to get our vote. Because the other folks is just a little too off the chain. You know. Matter of fact, especially if anybody was talking to civil rights legislation during that time period, black people more than likely was gonna vote for them.
right.
You know. And so now, although Biden ain't perfect, I ain't really thrilled about Biden. I know where my vote is going. And it has less to do with being, and I think this other thing too. It has less to do with like being afraid of Trump or Trump. It's just like, all right, this is what I got, so I'm voting for you. Like I ain't finna. And then also, but this is another key thing too: the electoral freaking college.
Okay.
Outdated system.
Very
outdated system.
Especially in 2020.
Because it's the whole idea that it's so just with the whole premise of the electoral college, the people really don't vote for the president.
Right.
They
are just supposedly supposed to be a persuasion for the electors on who they should vote.
So
based on who we say.
Right. So traditionally the state is going, the electors of the state
are going to
vote for.
Are supposed to. But we saw last time that some states where Hillary still won the popular vote, the electors still went to Donald Trump, and they supposed to be changing that, I guess, to where the electors have to reflect.
And the trip part is, it's so funny how like we're not in 1789 anymore. Like this is not a nation of 13 colonies where like if you did have a popular vote and you had one state that has the majority of people, like you have a state where states like Pennsylvania and Virginia and New York at the time who had Massachusetts had large populations versus Georgia who was a penal colony.
Right.
Like yeah. I get it. You want to be able to try to find some kind of, try to make the election as balanced as possible in terms of how representing what the quote unquote people want. But now we from sea to shining sea now. You know, we 330 million people. I think 330 million people. We put like every other election is one person, one vote. This one should be too.
Right. That's why that's my only thing.
Like, because if it's like that, if you eligible to vote and you register to vote and you vote, if we had no electoral college, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
Right. For sure.
We wouldn't be having this conversation. And now we faced with the threat of somebody, if they do lose, he about to raise all hell. He about to raise all types of hell to try to find a way to stay in office.
Right.
And what's scary is if it goes to the Supreme Court and they push that person through, then you have another case like in 2000 where the Supreme Court essentially is going to decide who the president is, which shouldn't be the case.
Right.
It shouldn't be up to 9 judges to determine who the president is. It should be the will of the people.
Well, we're gonna kind of segue, but because I like to get your music opinion and sports opinions too. While we are talking about the culture, but I'm gonna use this segue because I'm gonna talk about my favorite rapper and what he said about politics, or how he feel like we should be ran. And Cole, he was saying that in 2020, basically, there should be an app on my phone, like when it comes to taxes and what our taxes are going for. There should be an app on our phone where we should be able to really like choose, okay, this is what the city plans on doing. You got so much for roads, so much for education, so much for, police, so much. We should be able to control more of like, where do we feel like this money should go? Like, if we feel like our roads aren't getting enough attention, but police are getting too much attention or too much funding, we should be able to control that as easy with like a few clicks on our phone. It's 2020. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like, but it's and then we're going to keep segueing in because there's other rappers who feel like, just black people in general just aren't, or black rappers in general aren't even supposed to have a say in what goes on in politics. You got black folks who feel like that, and you got white folks who feel like that. You got black folks who feel like rappers should just sit out here and rap and continue to entertain because they are entertainers. Since they're entertainers, they shouldn't really have as much to say about you know what I'm saying, politics or policies and things of that nature. And I just feel like that is such a very, 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 very ignorant thing to think. But a lot of people really think that way. I think it's a lot of people who feel like Young Thug should not have anything to say about what's going on with the president because he's Young Thug, right? Or feel like, and even Young Thug has said before, like them laws and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna leave that to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't deal with the law. We don't deal with laws, politics. Like, you know, I'm a rapper. I just feel like, but wouldn't a rapper be? If we can get more younger rappers to speak on things, I think that'd be like the biggest thing for because music and hip hop is so big in our culture. I think that's one way we can really get a more interested demographic of younger black people to be, you know what I'm saying, paying attention to politics. It's rappers. If Ghana and Lil Baby, like Lil Baby when he made Bigger Picture.
Yeah. Like, I think with that, they citizens, man. They can talk about politics anytime they want to.
Right.
You know, I think the medium that they choose to talk about it is their option too. Because definitely they have a captive audience to be able to bring people in who may not necessarily talk about politics often, or who just begin to engage people and just engage a new audience and help them become more politically active. I will also encourage, and this is not even just for rappers, but this for all of us, including myself. Like, we need more political education in our communities. Like, because on one hand, like I hear what Cole is saying, like we should be able to like control where our taxes go. Like, I hear that. And interesting enough, like that's what you got city council meetings for.
It's true.
That's what you got. They have budget meetings all the time at city council meetings. You could go to the city council meeting and ask them like and question them about the budget. Those things are public record too. You could see where the money is going.
Right, for sure.
All that stuff is available. So it really ain't no secret where money is going and how money is being moved. A lot of times we're just unaware. And we're not informed. And a lot of it too, I think, and again, I know for myself, there's so much more political education that I need. I'm learning new stuff daily and learning how this system that we live in works. I just feel like political education is just not a priority in communities. In our community, it's not a priority.
And I feel like it's a lot of things, getting back to hip hop, that we don't talk about that we should. Like they were talking about Public Enemy, like when they first came out, like these men were really like, before they added Flavor and all those other people, like they were really just about like progress of black people. Like they used to work in community centers. They were really like Griff and Chuck D. Like they were really like about just progressing black people. Like, and then the rap was just a way, because it was popular, people were listening. Let me fight the power, you know what I'm saying, through our music. And I think music has gotten so far from that to where like that's originally what it was supposed to be, is a voice for, even when you went back to NWA, it was still supposed to be niggas with attitude about what we are dealing with, you know what I'm saying, whether it's from police, whether it's from the government. Like it was always still purpose to be something that could feed us in a way that it was more than just something that made us bob head. And our music is just really like, it's just something that I listen to music sometimes and I don't even really pay attention to what the words, especially some of these young niggas now, because it's like, for real, like I just love to bob my head to it. Like it really turned me up. Like for real, I want to dance to it, but it doesn't feed me. And I can feel that sometimes.
But the thing too is they ain't everybody lane either. Like, or that may not just be what they want to talk about in their music. And that's cool too. I think what shouldn't happen is that we shouldn't put pressure on people to talk about things that, one, they may not be equipped to talk about. Or then two, that may not be the thing they want to talk about or address in their music. I think that's the part where like other platforms could be utilized. Or sometimes people might throw hints in there or whatnot, but it may not be the exclusive content of their music. Because again, for some of them, like this is what I do to get paid.
Right.
Y'all might not be trying to hear about me talking about Donald Trump or hearing about me talking about Biden and waxing poetic about the Articles of Confederation and how we transitioned to the Constitution. Like, and that's cool. But for those, so I think that's the thing where it's like, against like, there may be an artist out there that's doing that. And who knows, they just might not have the platform or like the backing to get their voices heard. And so I think, because I know there was a point in time I was like, man, ain't nobody out here talking about nothing. But because even then, you had Public Enemy, but then you had Two Live Crew. But what's so funny is Two Live Crew is probably like the most important rap group because they fought against the U.S. government when it came to freedom of speech.
Right, yeah.
Like, straight up, folks wouldn't be able to do what they doing in rap songs right now without Two Live Crew. And then that's how come we got a whole parental advisory sticker now.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's the thing, I think, like, so on one hand, if an artist chooses to talk about it, like, nobody should ever tell an artist that they should not talk about something. Like, they should be able to talk about whatever they want to talk about. Because again, freedom of speech. Say what you want, say what you will. If you choose to talk about politics, be as informed as possible. Or even let people know that you're growing and that you're learning too. And this is how you want to use your vehicle. You want to use your vehicle to teach. And then also understanding too, now we are in a world now where you don't just have to do it through your music, but there are other avenues available for people to have conversations, discussions that they want to have that they may not want to express in their music. And so I think that's where it's like, it's on individual artists at that, but they shouldn't feel that pressure to feel like they have to, because I would rather, if you decide to, that you somewhat know what you're talking about. You ain't got to be no expert, none of us.
But you don't want to be seen as ignorant.
Yeah, like you don't want to be like misleading people and misguiding people,
And I guess that's the big thing, though, because a lot of these young folks don't know. So cause like you said, we're not educated at a young age on what this really looks like. So, I mean, when Cole first came out, he wasn't just necessarily doing, everything political. He talks about how, like, he lost himself. Kendrick, same way, then he got back to himself. But I don't know, because most of the artists, if you were to, like, name your top 5 or 6 artists of all time, a lot of people going to put Biggie and Pac, and even though we don't talk about Biggie a lot as a political figure, but bro was very, like, he was very outspoken when it came to police brutality and things of that nature too. He just wasn't as, I guess, ramped up as Tupac was about it. But most of the ones that we're gonna call great are the ones that gave us some sort of substance with the music. Like, even if you were saying your art, you don't want to have to sacrifice your art, maybe because it's some people ain't gonna rock with you trying to be education all the time. I think the ones that we deem the greatest usually were those who educated us, though. Like, I think we as a community really yearn for that. You know what I'm saying? We just want somebody who can do it in a cool way.
The people that we celebrate having on some level mastered language in such a way that they could talk, they know how to talk about a variety of subjects with using other words that do not directly talk about that subject, but they are talking about it. Like, they just, the wordplay, how they can, the analysis of different situations and how they manipulate words, they just do it better than everybody else.
Right.
They're not going to necessarily talk about a topic directly, but the metaphors and the similes are crazy. And you just wrote, like, I think that's the thing about the greats. It's like, it's not only the content, but it's the technique and the art. Like, they're able to do all those things. Some folks could be skilled rappers, but they just don't, but they just don't know that their topics are still like, they talk about the same thing every time. And matter of fact, not only talk about the same thing, but talk about it in the same way. Say it in the same way. Like,
become bubblegum.
Like, and then also the other thing is, like, a lot of our favorite artists, I know at least from mine, like, you see their growth. Like, you're able to track their growth in their music. Like, something that, something I plan on doing at some point in his life is, like, I always wanted to track Jay-Z's growth in his music. Well, really Jay-Z and Kendrick's in particular, their spiritual growth in their music, through their music, and how it's articulated in their music. And it's like being a minister, certain things perk in my ear when I hear them talk about certain things. And I've seen that growth over the years. I've always wanted to sit down and dissect that. And I think that's the thing that I appreciate about artists, when you're able to see how they just start from Reasonable Doubt in 96 till you get to a 444, and you just see how this person has just gotten to a place now where he's willing to talk about, essentially give us therapy on a record. So going from like being this hustler, braggadocious.
Ooh, that but no, he can talk some shit.
Yeah.
That's why I love him. That's why I love it.
Until now you get to the point where he talk about like, yo, I almost lost my wife, I almost lost my family. Like that's a leap.
That openness though, like that. But you know what?
And
you said this to me before.
It took almost 20 years to get there.
Right, but you said this to me before, and I think this was back when you were still like seriously considered doing like your doctorate on like the infusion of like hip hop and the gospel. Mm-hmm. But that's why a lot of us relate more to like hip hop, or because even if the rapper isn't really rapping about things that they've seen, we know that the things that they rap about really happen. Like we see those things on a daily basis, or we see them often enough to know this is real somewhere. And then, but a lot of times when you talk about pastors or preachers, when they're in the pulpit, when you get the word from them, it's almost doctored up. So, and it has to be in such a
filtered.
way. Yeah, it's not as uncensored. It's not as like just raw. Like give it to, and that's what we really. I think that's what a lot of people who don't have answers, who are in a community who doesn't have a lot of answers, feel like we always falling behind. When we try to get some sort of release, we wanted to at least, or some sort of someone giving us hope. We don't necessarily want that hope to just be all make believe. We don't, because we know life is not a fairy tale. We know, you know what I'm saying. Life ain't been no crystal style. We know that.
Word to Langston.
You feel me? So we want to hear, how do we deal with this when we know what we have to fight against? And a lot of rappers show you, well, I can at least show you how to get money. You know what I'm saying? And even if it might not be the right way, it's like, oh, but that's a come up through what we like. I don't think we a lot of preachers preach hope, but they don't preach it in a way that it really relates to what we go through in the struggles.
Yeah, it's like the one thing with preaching, like some of the best preaching I heard in a sermon, they gonna take you through the mud before they pull you out. Like we can't. What's hope if we don't sit time and deal with the hopelessness? Like to have hope, that means I have to have like some understanding. I have got to have felt hopelessness at some point to even want to consider hope. You know, for hope to be real, I got to be down. Like I think that's the strength, like black preaching in particular, is because like historically, like just as a community, we've like hope is what's helped us get this far. Like we done seen the bottom of hell already. Like our ancestors, and when I even say ancestors, I'm talking about the 60s. I ain't even going back to 1860, 1760. I'm talking about like
our grandparents and parents.
For hundreds of years, they done seen the bottom of hell. And somehow, some way, they still had like that hope still kept them pushing through hell to get to some level of stable ground on their way, trying to figure out what heaven looked like. That's like, and for that, like that's where like some of the best preaching I'd heard, and it took me down there. When you, like I said, you deal with the depths and reality of life. But to keep pushing, I got to believe there's got to be something different. Because if I didn't believe that there was something different, sometimes that's what people give up. When they don't think something can change, then that's when they tap out.
Right.
And we can't afford to.
Because I think we often get a picture of, and this is where I think a disconnect with black folks and the religion or the Christianity, the disconnect is that we've always. First, it was paint. Jesus was painted to us as a very. I mean, he was humble, but almost humble to a fault. To a like, they want to tell you what he say, turn the other cheek.
They made Jesus weak.
Yeah, but they don't want to tell you when he, like you said, he went in there and flipped them tables. Like he didn't flip them tables real nicely. You know what I'm saying? Like he had to be destructive almost. Like so, you have to. They made, like you said, they made Jesus seem like he's just a punk. Like, oh my God.
Like for Jesus to move how Jesus moved in the context in which he moved,
he was a G.
Yeah,
Jesus.
He was wild.
Yeah.
Jesus was wild.
He was hanging with people that. He was hanging with strippers, prostitutes, niggas like Trump. I mean, who evade taxes. You know what I'm saying? Like criminals. Like he hung with a whole bunch of like different type of people. He wasn't just hanging with like the Pharisees didn't like him. Like the people who studied the law, knew the law inside and out, but still missed the whole thing about what it was supposed to really be about. Like, you know, they couldn't stand him. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like that's why we have a lot of people who I feel like are more like Jesus than they think, but because the church has these gatekeepers that tell you what you can and cannot do, what you can say, how you cannot. You know what I'm saying? Like when you tried to do the trap church in Atlanta, I know you faced some pushback for that. You know what I'm saying? I know you did. I know you may not want to speak on it, but I know just as a Christian belonging to a church, I know you received it.
Yeah, it was funny. One major thing I learned while living in Atlanta is gatekeepers with everything. So not just with church, because even with trap church, it was the idea that the whole idea is about like the church has to be among the people, one. And then two, that it's an obligation for the church to fight against those systems that are interrupting people's lives. So like the thing about it was you had this at the time when the pink, like this still was like one of the best marketing strategies I ever seen in my life for an album. 2 Chainz, like that was smart. I remember seeing them painting that joint. It was like April 2017. They was painting the house pink. I remember that because they was doing like this little bike thing, Streets Alive in Atlanta. So like they block off the streets and people were just riding bikes up and down the street. And I remember them painting it. And then I think a few weeks later, the album come out and you see the house. And then, you know, it became like a huge tourist attraction.
Right.
And it's funny because it happened off a joke, because I remember jokingly saying, because at the time too, this was like when you had like all these different trap things, like trap yoga, trap this, trap that. Everybody kind of just throwing trap on, like trap swimming, like trap breathing, like you just trapping and trap. And so like I remember joking with a friend, and I was like, man, somebody gonna do trap church one day, just on some jokes, because it was like, all right. And so one of the homies, she hit me up, my homie Ronnie hit me up, and she was like, yo, you should do that. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I will do that. Because the thing was, it's like you have people coming to this house. And in a lot of respects, especially like when you had trap music, it gave us a glimpse into like life in the trap. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole genre of music that really exposed us what that environment, what that ecosystem was like. And how this house in a lot of respects was kind of people being able to live out their trap fantasies. Because again, you get to show up to the house and then you get to go and be about your business. Right. Versus like we legit go like 5-10 minutes away from that house, you back in the trap. Like, and this folk like legit trapping. Like they ain't got time to cut a house because they on the block. And so the whole idea was like to remember that although we in this space, like this is a real thing. And this real thing is entertainment for us. We listen to the music. Like we talking about trap, like we listen to Jeezy Trap or Die. We listen to Thug Motivation. We listen to trap music. Trap music is like one of my favorite albums. Yeah. But that music comes from real life experience that's not in the past, but it's people's current reality. So how do we move in such a way that this doesn't have to be people's lives? Because at the end of the day, it's called the trap for a reason. It's called that for a reason. Because it is a trap. Folks get trapped in the legal system. People get trapped with addiction. It's all these different traps. And I know people ain't trying to be in a trap forever. I ain't never seen an animal get caught in a trap and just want to sit there in that trap. They fighting for their life to get out the trap. In a lot of respects, they trap so they don't have to trap no more. But
most do.
It's the
most
cycle.
realize they can't make it a career.
But it's the cycle though. It's that cycle. And so with that though, now to make it happen, I was rogue when I kind of did it though, because I was just telling people to pull up, and then the people who ran the trap house was like, "Yo, you just can't tell people to pull up." It's like, my bad. And then, but put a gate to the gatekeeper piece though, like even in social justice movements, there are gatekeepers because people feel like you got to go through them before you do stuff, and if you don't communicate with them and talk with them about something, then they'll talk about you on the interwebs. Now, granted, I don't respond to people on the interwebs because I ain't finna do all that. Like, and these grown adult men too. That's the funny part about it too. Like grown adult men. I'm like, dog, why is that? And it's funny too because people they say, well, I know this person. I'm like, dog, you don't know me because if you know me, you would have called me instead of talking about me on no internet.
Right. But
like, that's actually my first time ever addressing that publicly.
Yeah,
I just sat on that for a while
because I just know another idea too. I remember when you first thought about it, because I think you were doing something on the weekends with your youth church about hip hop and hymns.
Oh, hymns and hip hop. That was another.
Hip-hop. So yeah, so you were doing that because I came for the trap service. I came to that church. But I remember when you first kind of threw that idea around and you told me about it. The thing about it too is that the church, the attitude in which the church but the attitude in which we pursue those who we deem should be, that we are trying to reach, is so laid back, just let everything come to me. But when you think about a trap, like, you out there getting it. You gonna get it by enemy. You setting up anywhere. Like, as long as you can get it and you got a product that you're trying to get out, then you gonna make it happen. And so I just feel like that was another great thing that I liked about it, was because you were showing like we can really take church anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, if you really do, if you're doing it right.
And interesting enough, I think that was another one of the dope things. Like, when we asked about Jesus and what his church would look like in 2020, he dang sure went. Actually, this would probably be the perfect ministry. This would be the perfect time for Jesus to do ministry, because when Jesus never like, so I'm gonna start here, I'm gonna go back somewhere and probably come back here. So, for one, Jesus never had like his own quote unquote church. Like, when we think about like a building or
right.
like, it's like, if anything, Jesus would pull up to your synagogue talking trash about your preachers, about your temple leader or whatnot. He gonna come in, he gonna say a verse and have all y'all mad like, dog, why is you coming here talking all this trash? Or he'll pull up on the block. Like, Jesus was really out here doing like trapping. Like, he like pull up on the side of the hill and just start talking and people pull up. Or he gonna pull up at your house. He gonna pull up on the homies like, yo, I'm pulling up your crib today. We gonna chop it up over here. And no telling what kind of conversations they're having there. But it's this type of ministry that's organic. It's like he's on the move. It's not this kind of stagnant, stuck in one place where y'all gotta come to me, but I'm going to you all. And so when we think about how he navigated in ministry, and in a lot of respects, what we see now in many of our ministry is that we listen less, and I've been seeing a lot of people post this as of late too. We listen less, we talk less about Jesus and how he moved. Really, our idea and conception and understanding of the church was given to us by Paul. Like, we're more followers of Paul than we are of Jesus. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you.
And so in terms of just the theology, in terms of like Paul going around setting up all these churches and going to these different cities and going to these different communities and setting up shop and setting up these churches. And that's like, it's a Paul thing. Like, Jesus was out here floating, doing his thing, and then went on about his business. But then from there, they did begin to set up their communities. But then when you started seeing like this institution, like, I never really saw Jesus kind of trying to institutionalize this thing. But it's really like this organic community that we're trying to create that's going to actively move to impact the communities that we're in. It's not trying to build a building here and have y'all put all y'all money in this building and now we ain't got no buildings. Y'all can go to y'all churches now. We all tuning in online. And who's to say that for some, they may not ever go back to the building. Why you save my money on overhead? You gotta pay no light bill.
Sure.
Now, granted, if you still paying the mortgage, tight on you. Or you could retrofit the building, do more things that support community instead of trying to have us pack out in the building once, twice a week for whatever reason. So, I think that's the part when we talk about going back to the very first one, when we talk about Jesus in 2020. Jesus probably, if he can't move nowhere, shoot, pop up on IG Live. Shoot. Like, what's up? Yeah, just get and do what he does. And I think for myself, I think that's the part where, like, I kind of began to want to see myself. Like, I think something I desired in ministry was being able to be fluid. I didn't necessarily want to be tied to a singular place, feeling like I'm tied to this building, tied to this mortgage, tied to these bills. Like, and you become in a real sense, you become a slave. You become a slave to the, for lack of better words, the institution. And you're not able to just be and move and flow and do, like, when your livelihood is dependent upon the institution. Like, I'll never forget the day from day one in ministry. I never wanted ministry to be my breadwinner. Like, I never wanted to depend on ministry to feed my family. Like, because you could lose yourself in that.
Right.
Now,
once you put bills with
I'm going to say what I need to say for y'all, because I know what can get you hyped. I know what can make you put something in there. And interesting enough, that's why a lot of people turn off a church, because they be thinking like, oh, they just in there trying to get some bread. Because there's
a real connection.
Because folk know how to play on people's emotions when it comes to preaching. When it comes, because people come in these spaces and they vulnerable. They looking for hope. Some folks coming in, they done had a rough week. They down, they out. They shoot. Having family issues, having job issues, and they need a word from the Lord. If you say the right thing on the right Sunday and they feeling in the right way, take all my money. But also too, there are a lot of good places too. So let me not make it painted like that. It's a lot of good pastors, preachers, ministers, churches. A lot of people doing good things. I just know for me, because there's also actually was talking to one of my best friends, talking to his dad for a second yesterday, and we was joking about what he told one of his friends who's a minister. And he was like, "You remember what I told you when you first got in the ministry?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "No matter what it is, just tell the truth." And I think there's a freedom to tell the truth when you're not tied to something, when there's no strings attached. Like, I don't have anything holding me right now. Like, you speak truth, whatever that truth is, just truth, what is, and that's a whole philosophical question. What is truth? Let me get back in the mic. That's a whole nother, like, so yeah, man.
That's what it look like in 2020.
2020, man, he just gonna out here getting to you how it is, I ain't gonna say that.